So here it is on the bike, the CYC X1 Pro installed as the stock kit that you can order direct from CYC. This video is going to be a little bit disjointed because I ran into a few snags along the way. I wanted to show the full install though, so the controls were put on a little bit earlier and the motor parts went on about a couple of days ago. So I've been riding it around a little bit since then. So if you've seen the earlier parts, you can always skip past those and just go back onto the motor install. So here we go. So welcome to the CYC X1 Pro install video. This is going to be a stock install using the parts that you would get if you ordered a kit from CYC. So for anyone who's never seen one before, the X1 Pro is a 3000 watt motor made by CYC. It's new to the market and it's going to be mounted on this Salsa Via frame, which has been upgraded to have suspension on the front forks and hydraulic brakes front and rear. This is going to be a pretty long video by my standards because I want to cover all the aspects of the install, plus any sort of problems that I might run into, and a bit of information about how I think it's going. So bear with me and we're going to get started. So for this build, instead of mounting the motor first down there, I'm going to get the controls all squared away on the handlebars, and then I'm not going to be tempted to rush them at the end so I can get out and ride the thing. So I'm going to put the throttle on the right for this one, and I'm going to put the display here on the left. The throttle is a little bit bigger, so I'm going to do what I did before and cut down this handle grip so it fits the throttle on and keeps the same proportion for the bars. So for on the right hand side of the bike where the throttle is going to be, what I've done is cut down the handle grip so that it will allow me to use the throttle without it being sort of miles out of center. So I'm going to get this on, and then I'm going to get everything tidied up in the right position and locked in place, and we'll see how this side looks. So this is everything secured onto the right. This was the only position I could really put the throttle with this coming down, because anywhere else it would impinge with the gear shifter. But yeah, it feels pretty nice with the twist throttle. Still got access to the brakes, and it's still reasonably easy to shift gears. It's a slight bit across from where it was before, but it should work fine for on the road. So for the display on the left hand side, all I've done is I slacken this off, make sure it's nice and loose. I'm putting it inside of the brake because I'm not going to be using the buttons that often, I don't think, and having the brakes nice and close for the grip seems to be the best option. So everything's loose. I'm just going to get it in the right positions, and then I'm going to snug everything up just using Allen keys. The one underneath this is super tiny though, so you need a really small Allen key for that. So this is everything on the left hand side of the bike in position. The display is on. I will say that it is a plastic fixing around the edge of the mount, and the screw is very small, and you don't need much to torque it into place. I didn't even use this full screwdriver, I just used the bit and a holder, and that got it in nicely. So they've also supplied with the kit these, if I can get it to focus, these brake cutoff leads, and they work with a sensor and a magnet, and you put the magnet somewhere on the brake, so when you move the handle it separates the magnet from the sensor and cuts power to the motor. So there's one for this side and there's one for this side, and to be honest I always find them to be a bit of a pain in the arse to mount. So I think with these, I'm going to use this piece here, which is a sort of an adjustment lever, and I'm going to use something to stick the magnet onto this part, and then I'm going to mount the the sensor onto this part, and then when this part is moved away by the lever, it should work, and this should give me a decent enough surface, I think, there to get the brake magnet on, and then I've just got to figure out a good way of popping that on there. It comes with a sticky mount, which I don't know, it just looks the wrong shape and size, so I'll see what I can figure out, and I might end up using a zip or zap tie to get that fixed. So what I've done is to basically super glue the magnet onto the end here. So that's open position, so the motor would be cut out, and that's the closed position right next to the sensor, and that would be enable the motor to run. So it's nothing fancy, and I'm going to leave it like that for now and see how it works once the motor's all hooked up, and then probably figure out some better way of mounting the sensor on, because I'm not sure I like that sticker, and I don't think it's going to last very long if it starts raining either. So that's that one on that side on, and then I've done exactly the same over on this side, and you see it breaks, close, and then breaks. There we go. So for this part, we're going to mount the motor here onto the bottom bracket here, and for that we're going to use the through axle, the spacers, and this bottom bracket tool here, and that's going to get this motor suspended down from here and fixed into place. So it's quite tricky to get everything lined up, but we'll get that done and tightened in, and I'll show you the different stages of doing that. So the trickiest part is getting everything lined up correctly. You could use a block at the bottom to help support the motor. I've done this a couple of times now, so I'm getting used to it, but it is quite heavy, about 3 kilos, so you do need to hold it in place to get it all through. So the through axle runs through the bottom bracket, and in my case, because it's a 68mm size, I have to use all of the provided spacers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get everything cinched in, and you have to turn anti-clockwise on the drive side. So I'm going to get it all locked in, but not tightened, because you have to lift the motor up onto the frame. So on the non-drive side, you actually turn it in clockwise, and that will lock in the other side of the through axle. So once both parts of the through axle are secured in place but not tightened, you can lift the motor into position, and then you use this strap to hold it tight against the frame before you then put the correct torque on this through axle. So the manufacturer's specifications call for about 25 Newton meters of force to lock this in place, and I'm going to be using a torque wrench to make sure that is correct. So with the motor secured in place, the next part is to remove the screws and bolts, holding this chain guard into place, and lower that down so you can get this this gold chain located onto this drive cog here. So with the gold chain hanging in position, the next part is to get the crank arm and the I guess the main drive cog working down here. So this part goes on here with the chain fitted around it. So I'll put it into the chain, and then we'll slide it on there to be locked into position. So with this on there, you can see we still have quite a gap there back, which this needs to be pushed onto the bike, and we use this bolt here to go inside, and then that gets tightened on to bring that in, and then everything should be in alignment. You can see that the chain tensioner wheel is just below there, and when this gets rotated back into the place, that puts the tension onto this chain to prevent it ever coming off this this cog. So with this locked on securely in position, feels good. So I'm going to get this secured back in the correct position, which will stop you getting caught up in this chain while you're riding it. The next part is to get the pedal assist installed on this side, and that simply slips over this part here and locks in with these splines on the edge. There's no actual bolt or anything to hold it in place. The opposite crank arm then goes on this side and it's secured in place with this other bolt. You have to use the smaller of the two bolts for this side, so make sure you get that the right way around. So the pedal assist, like most other aspects of this, use these high go plugs which are waterproofed, and all they do is they clip together, and you can see the little notch fits with the notch on the other side, and that makes sure they're oriented correctly. You have to be quite careful because they do have little tiny pins in, and if you bend them then you're going to be looking for a spare part unless you can somehow get them straightened out, so be careful when you connect these. So you also get the usual speed sensor with this kit to make sure that the display is showing the correct speed based on the rotations of the wheel. It knows the size of the rear wheel, and that allows you to calibrate it properly. So you have it on the inside, usually with a zip tie or zap tie, and then you mount the magnet directly onto the wheel. So I'm going to get that fixed into place, and I'll show you what that looks like. So the speed sensor's in place, the magnet's in place there, so hopefully that's going to be enough of a distance to trigger it off. If it doesn't, I might have to put a piece of blocking in here and move that closer to actually get it to work. And then I've just tidied these away down here for a temporary fix, but once I've got the bike up and running, I'm probably going to be playing around with that quite a lot and getting it tidied away a bit nicer. I haven't really talked that much about the wiring. It's not a particularly difficult harness. You have 4 inputs coming from the display here. You have an input coming from the throttle here. You have an input from each brake, one on each side, and they basically come down through the huge amounts of wiring they give you to this harness here, and then I've just basically bundled it all up for the moment, but I'm going to do something better, I think. Maybe get a 3D printer, make a housing or something, or cut them short and wire them shorter. They give huge distances, like in lengths. I still don't know quite why, but anyway, that's what they did. So it comes to this main point here, and then it runs down here, down the side, and it connects into the controller down in here with a high go plug. Just like all the other connections. The only other wiring is there's the battery connection that runs up the side here. They don't give you the longest length on that, but there it is. So that hooks up to the battery, and then there's the stuff for the speed sensors at the back here. I will say again, with the speed sensor, you need to have it really close to the magnet, otherwise it just doesn't work. So I'm using some cardboard here, but what I'm probably going to do is 3D print a part and then just get that to fit snugly in so that it activates the speed sensor. But that's all there is really to the wiring. Pretty much the same as with a BBSHD. It's the same kind of plugs, and it just popped together. So that's all the bits on the bike, and it's up and running. I'm pretty happy with the throttle response, but the PAS is not working as I think it should, and I need to do a little bit of digging to find out quite why that is. So I'm going to do lots more riding and do lots more work on the bike, and the next video I'm going to do in a few days or so is basically my thoughts on it initially, and probably what I'm going to do to improve the setup from there. But this is the stock setup. This is installed as you would get it out of the box, and with all the parts that they supply if you order a kit from them. So I'm going to leave it with a bit of a short ride around video again. It's mostly on throttle because the PAS is not, as I say, it's not working as I thought it should, so I need to work on that. So it's just going up some hills, mostly sort of 6% gradient up to about 10% gradient, just in the local area where I live. So enjoy. If people have comments, questions, want to know anything about it, let me know. Cheers.